Alexander Drake hadn't breathed fresh air in what felt like centuries. The suffocating world of corporate pleasantries and strategic networking draining him of what little patience he had left for the evening. His own birthday party, a lavish affair with 300 of Manhattan's elite filling his penthouse, had somehow become a business conference rather than a celebration. When his assistant had distracted the crowd with the announcement of an impending champagne toast, Alex had seized his chance, slipping through the sliding glass doors to his private terrace and down the hidden stairwell that led to the building's exclusive gardens. The night air hit his face like salvation as he loosened his bow tie, letting it hang undone around his neck. The manicured gardens stretched before him, illuminated by strategic lighting that made the space seem enchanted after dark. He exhaled deeply, rolling his shoulders back and letting the weight of being Alexander Drake, 35-year-old tech billionaire, most eligible bachelor according to Forbes, and tonight's reluctant guest of honor temporarily fall away. The sound of quiet humming stopped him mid-stride. Alex paused, looking around for its source, when he spotted her, a woman sitting on a stone bench partially hidden behind a flowering cherry tree, her face tilted up toward the sky. She wore a simple sundress despite the cool evening, her bare feet tucked beneath her, shoes discarded on the grass. What struck him most was how entirely unaware she seemed of the world around her, completely absorbed in whatever thoughts occupied her mind as her fingers gently stroked the petals of a nearby bloom. He should have turned around. Should have respected her solitude the way he so desperately sought his own. Instead, Alex found himself walking toward her, drawn by some inexplicable force he couldn't name. "I'm sorry to interrupt," he said softly, his voice carrying in the quiet garden. "I thought I was the only one who knew about this escape route." The woman startled, jerking toward the sound of his voice. Her eyes widened, they were a startling green, he noticed before her surprise melted into a gentle smile. "I didn't realize this garden had restricted access," she replied, her voice carrying a slight rasp that somehow suited her. "Should I be expecting security to escort me out?" Alex shook his head, taking a few steps closer. "Not unless you want to take me with you. I'd welcome the rescue." She laughed, a genuine sound that seemed to ripple through the garden. "Rough night, you could say that." He gestured to the empty space beside her on the bench. "May I?" she nodded, shifting to make room. "I'm Katherine, by the way, Katherine Frost." "Alex," he replied simply, savoring the rare opportunity to introduce himself without the weight of his last name and all it represented. "Just Alex tonight." "Well, just Alex," Katherine said with a teasing lilt. "What brings you to hide in a garden on a perfectly good Friday night?" Alex leaned back, looking up at the sliver of sky visible between the buildings. "Would you believe I'm escaping my own birthday party?" Katherine studied him, her head tilting slightly. "Actually, I would. You have that look." "What look?" "The I'm surrounded by people but completely alone look. I recognize it." She tucked a strand of auburn hair behind her ear. "It's the same reason I'm down here instead of up there." She gestured vaguely toward the upper floors of the building. "You're a guest at my—" Alex caught himself. "At the Drake party," Katherine nodded, amusement dancing across her features. "I designed the floral arrangements. The client insisted I stay to make sure everything remained perfect throughout the night." She leaned in conspiratorially. "Between us, I think they just wanted another pretty face in the crowd." Alex felt a smile tugging at his lips, the first genuine one of the evening. "Their loss is my gain, then, though I'm sorry you got stuck with such a demanding client." "It's not so bad," Katherine mused, tucking her legs underneath her more comfortably. "The pay is excellent, and occasionally I get to escape to beautiful gardens and meet interesting strangers." They fell into easy conversation, Katherine telling him about her floral design business Frost Botanicals, which she'd built from nothing after walking away from a promising but soul-crushing career in finance. Alex shared carefully edited stories from his own life, omitting the details that would immediately identify him as the Alexander Drake. It was refreshing to be seen as just a man, not a fortune, not a business opportunity, not a media target. "What about you?" Katherine asked eventually. "What do you do when you're not escaping parties?" Alex hesitated, settling on a version of the truth. "I run a company, technology." "Ah," Katherine nodded knowingly, "hence the hiding. Let me guess, everyone up there wants something from you. Am I that transparent?" "No." Her voice softened. "Just familiar. My ex was in finance. I've seen how people change when they sense opportunity." She tilted her head. "Is that why you introduced yourself as just Alex, hiding from your full identity?" Alex felt something inside him loosen, a knot of tension he'd been carrying for so long he'd forgotten it was there. "You're perceptive. I notice details. It's essential in my line of work." She gestured to the gardens around them. "Nature reveals itself in the subtleties." "People aren't so different." A comfortable silence fell between them, interrupted only by the distant sounds of the city and the occasional burst of laughter from the party floors above. Alex found himself studying Katherine's profile, the slight upward tilt of her nose, the constellation of freckles across her cheekbones, the way her eyes seemed to reflect the garden lights. "What?" she asked, catching his gaze. "Nothing, just—" Alex paused, surprised by his own honesty. "I can't remember the last time I had a conversation this genuine." Katherine's expression softened. "That sounds lonely." "It is," he admitted. The simple acknowledgement felt both vulnerable and freeing. The moment stretched between them, something unspoken yet undeniable building in the space of their shared solitude. Then Katherine's phone buzzed, shattering the spell. She glanced down at the screen and sighed. Duty calls. Apparently, the centerpieces on tables 7 through 9 need immediate attention. She rolled her eyes but stood, slipping her feet back into her sandals. The demands of billionaires wait for no woman. Alex winced slightly at her unknowing reference to him but covered it with a smile. "Will you come back after you've saved the centerpieces?" Katherine hesitated, something vulnerable crossing her features. "I'd like to, but—" She smiled apologetically. "I have an early delivery tomorrow. This was a lovely escape while it lasted, though." Alex felt a disproportionate disappointment but nodded. "Of course." She took a few steps away before turning back. "Maybe our paths will cross again, just Alex." "I'd like that, Katherine Frost." She disappeared up the garden path, and Alex remained seated, wondering at the strange emptiness her departure left behind. After several minutes, he reluctantly made his way back to his party, his thoughts still lingering in the garden with the woman who had no idea she'd been talking to the very billionaire she'd been hired to impress. The next morning, Alex found himself distracted during his executive meeting, his mind wandering to green eyes and a genuine laugh. On impulse, he asked his assistant to get him the contact information for the florist from his party. "Sir, there were multiple vendors involved," his assistant replied. "Frost Botanicals," Alex said without hesitation. "Katherine Frost." 3 hours later, he stood outside a modest storefront in Chelsea, the weathered sign reading "Frost Botanicals" swinging gently in the autumn breeze. Through the window, he could see Katherine arranging flowers, her movements precise and almost meditative. She wore simple jeans and a paint-splattered t-shirt, her hair pulled into a messy bun, a far cry from the polished professionals he typically encountered. Something about her complete absorption in her work struck him as beautiful. Taking a deep breath, Alex pushed open the door, a small bell announcing his arrival. Katherine looked up, recognition immediately flooding her face, followed quickly by confusion. "Just Alex, what are you doing here?" "I wanted to see if you might be free for coffee," he said, suddenly feeling uncharacteristically nervous. "Or lunch. Or really any meal categorization that would allow us to continue our conversation from last night." A slow smile spread across her face. "You tracked down my shop just to ask me to coffee." "I did." "That's either incredibly sweet or mildly stalkerish," she teased. "I'm aiming for the former," Alex replied, relaxing slightly at her humor. "Though I should probably confess something before we go any further." Katherine set down her shears, giving him her full attention. That sounds ominous. My full name is Alexander Drake, he said simply, watching her face carefully. It took only seconds for understanding to dawn in her eyes. As in, the Alexander Drake the birthday party was. Mine, yes. Katherine blinked rapidly, processing this information. So when I was complaining about demanding billionaires, you were complaining directly to one, yes. Alex couldn't help but smile at her expression. For what it's worth, I found your honesty refreshing. Katherine laughed, the sound filling the small shop. Well, that's mortifying. Please don't be embarrassed. I'm the one who should apologize for the deception. Alex took a step closer to her workbench. It was nice being just Alex for a change. Katherine studied him for a long moment. I can understand that. She wiped her hands on her apron. So, Alexander Drake wants to have coffee with me. Just Alex would prefer it, actually, he replied, if that's still an option. Her smile returned, softer this time. I think I'd like to have coffee with just Alex. Give me 5 minutes to close up. That coffee turned into dinner, which turned into a walk along the High Line as night fell over the city. Katherine was unlike anyone Alex had ever known, straightforward, unpretentious, and completely unimpressed by his wealth or status. She treated him like a person first, asking about his passions and frustrations rather than his business ventures or investments. So why technology? She asked as they leaned against a railing, the city lights stretching before them. What drew you to it? Problem solving, Alex answered without hesitation. I've always been fascinated by finding efficient solutions to complex issues. He smiled ruefully. My parents thought I'd become an engineer, not build a tech empire. Are they proud of you? They were. Alex's voice softened. They passed away in a car accident 6 years ago. Katherine placed her hand over his on the railing. I'm sorry. It was hard, he admitted. They were good people, grounded. They kept me anchored to what matters. He looked out over the city. Sometimes I wonder if they'd recognize who I've become. Katherine squeezed his hand gently. Who have you become? The question hit him harder than he expected. Someone who had to escape his own birthday party to remember what genuine connection feels like. He turned to face her. Until last night, I'd forgotten. Their eyes held for a long moment, something deeper than attraction passing between them, a recognition, perhaps, of kindred spirits despite their different worlds. Well, Katherine finally said, her voice quiet in the night air, I'm glad you escaped. When Alex walked Katherine to her apartment that night, he knew with certainty that he wanted to see her again. And again. The feeling terrified and exhilarated him in equal measure. Over the following weeks, Alex found himself rearranging meetings and clearing his schedule to spend time with Katherine. They developed a rhythm, meeting at small cafes and hidden parks where they could talk without the intrusion of his public persona. He learned about her childhood in a small Connecticut town, her brief, disastrous marriage to a Wall Street trader who'd valued ambition over kindness, and her courageous decision to start over with nothing but her passion for flowers and design. My parents thought I was having a breakdown, Katherine confessed one evening as they walked through the Brooklyn Botanic Garden. Maybe I was, but it was the kind of breakdown that clears the way for something better. I admire that, Alex said sincerely, the courage to walk away and rebuild. Katherine smiled, nudging his shoulder playfully. Says the man who built a tech empire, that's different, I've never had to start over. Everyone starts over in some way, Katherine mused. Some just do it more dramatically than others. As autumn deepened into winter, their relationship evolved naturally. Alex found himself opening up about the loneliness of his position, the constant pressure to perform, the weariness of never being certain if people wanted him or what he could provide. Katherine listened without judgment, offering perspectives that challenged him to see his life differently. On a snowy December evening, Alex took Katherine to his penthouse for the first time. He'd been hesitant to bring her into this part of his world, afraid it might change something between them. But Katherine walked through his enormous living room, past the priceless art and custom furniture, and headed straight for the terrace doors. "This is where you escaped from," she said, looking out at the gardens below where they'd first met. "I understand the impulse better now. It's beautiful up here, but—" "But what?" Alex asked, coming to stand beside her. "It feels a bit like a museum, perfect but untouched." She turned to him. "Where do you actually live in this space?" The question caught him off guard. "What do you mean? Show me your favorite spot. The place that actually feels like you." Alex hesitated, then took her hand and led her to a smaller room off the main living area. It was modestly furnished with comfortable seating, bookshelves overflowing with well-worn volumes, and a desk cluttered with engineering prototypes and sketches. "This is my workspace, where I still get to be an inventor instead of a CEO." Katherine moved through the room, running her fingers over his books, examining the half-built prototypes with curious eyes. "This feels like you," she said softly. "The real you." That night, when they kissed for the first time, it felt inevitable, as natural as breathing. Her lips were soft against his, her body fitting perfectly against his as though they'd been designed as complementary pieces. When they finally pulled apart, Alex rested his forehead against hers, breathing in the faint scent of flowers that always seemed to cling to her skin. "Stay," he whispered, the word both a question and a plea. Katherine's answer was to pull him closer, her lips finding his again in silent affirmation. Hours later, as moonlight spilled across his bedroom floor and Katherine slept peacefully beside him, Alex realized with startling clarity that he was falling in love with her. The thought should have terrified him. He'd carefully avoided serious relationships, having seen too many people interested only in what his wealth could provide. But with Katherine, everything felt different. She saw him in a way no one had in years. Their relationship deepened through the winter, but it wasn't without challenges. Katherine fiercely guarded her independence, refusing Alex's offers to help expand her business or ease her financial burdens. "I built this myself," she told him firmly when he suggested investing in her shop. "I need to know I can sustain it myself too." Alex respected her determination, even as he struggled to reconcile his instinct to provide with her need for self-sufficiency. Their first serious argument erupted when a magazine published photos of them together, identifying Katherine as the billionaire's new flame. "This is exactly what I didn't want," Katherine said, pacing his living room, the magazine thrown on the coffee table between them. "I'm not just Alexander Drake's girlfriend. I have my own identity, my own business." "I know that," Alex replied, frustration edging his voice. "I can't control the media, Katherine, but this is your world. I'm just visiting it." She stopped pacing, her eyes meeting his. "What happens when the novelty wears off? When dating the florist stops being interesting?" The question hit him like a physical blow. "Is that what you think this is? Some kind of novelty?" "I don't know what to think," Katherine admitted, her voice softening. "I just know I've been here before, loving someone whose world was so different from mine that eventually I stopped fitting into it." "This isn't the same," Alex insisted, moving to take her hands in his. "You're not a novelty or a distraction. You're—" He paused, the truth rising to the surface. "You're everything, Katherine. I love you." The words hung between them, Alex as surprised by his declaration as Katherine appeared to be. But once spoken, he knew they were true with absolute certainty. Katherine's eyes filled with tears. "Alex." "You don't have to say it back," he said quickly. "I just need you to know that it's real for me, more real than anything has been in a very long time." Katherine looked at him for a long moment, vulnerability clear in her expression. "I love you too," she finally whispered. "That's why I'm scared, because this matters so much." That night marked a turning point. They agreed to face the challenges together: the media attention, the different worlds they inhabited, the balance between his prominence and her independence. It wasn't always easy, but they were committed to finding their way forward together. Spring arrived, bringing new growth to Katherine's garden designs and a renewed sense of possibility to their relationship. Alex found himself spending more time at her small apartment than his penthouse, drawn to the cozy warmth she'd created in her space. Her home was filled with plants and flowers, mismatched furniture, and the unmistakable sense of life being lived rather than displayed. One evening, as they cooked dinner together in her tiny kitchen, Alex realized he'd never felt more at home anywhere in his life. "Move in with me," he said suddenly, the words tumbling out before he could consider them. Katherine looked up from chopping vegetables, surprise evident on her face. "To your penthouse?" "No," Alex replied, the idea crystallizing as he spoke. "Let's find a new place, something that's ours, not mine or yours, something we build together." A slow smile spread across Katherine's face. "You'd leave your luxury penthouse for a place with me." "In a heartbeat," Alex said without hesitation. "Buildings are just structures. Home is where you are." They spent the summer searching for the perfect place, finally finding a brownstone in the West Village with a small but promising garden in the back. It needed work, but that was part of its appeal. It was a project they could tackle together, blending his practical engineering mindset with her artistic vision. As they renovated their new home, Alex found himself increasingly drawn to the idea of permanence with Katherine. She had transformed his life in ways he couldn't have imagined that night in the garden, bringing color, warmth, and authenticity back into a world that had grown increasingly sterile and transactional. On the anniversary of their first meeting, Alex led Katherine to the gardens where they'd met. He'd arranged for the space to be filled with the same flowers she'd designed for his birthday party the year before, creating a full-circle moment that wasn't lost on either of them. "I escaped my party that night looking for solitude," Alex said, holding both her hands in his as they stood beneath the flowering cherry tree. "Instead, I found you, and in finding you, I found myself again." Katherine's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "Who knew running away could lead you home?" Alex took a deep breath, reaching into his pocket for the small velvet box he'd been carrying for weeks. "Katherine Frost, you've shown me what it means to be seen for who I really am, not what I have or what I've built." He lowered himself to one knee, opening the box to reveal a ring with a center stone surrounded by smaller emeralds that matched her eyes. "I want to build a life with you not as a billionaire and a florist, but as Alex and Katherine. Will you marry me?" Tears spilled onto Katherine's cheeks as she nodded emphatically. "Yes," she managed through her emotion. "1,000 times yes." Their wedding the following spring was intimate by Billionaire standards. Only 100 guests gathered in the garden they'd painstakingly created behind their brownstone. Katherine had designed all the floral arrangements herself, transforming the space into an enchanted garden that reflected both her artistic vision and their journey together. Alex stood beneath an arch of roses and waited for his bride, surrounded by friends who knew him as a person rather than a portfolio. When Katherine appeared, walking toward him in a simple gown adorned with tiny fresh flowers in her hair, Alex felt his breath catch. She looked like a garden goddess, ethereal and yet entirely real. Their vows were personal and heartfelt, Alex promising to always see Katherine for the extraordinary woman she was, Katherine vowing to remind Alex of the man behind the billionaire whenever the world tried to reduce him to his wealth. "I escaped a party and found the rest of my life," Alex said, his voice carrying across their garden. "Some might call that luck, but I call it destiny." 3 years later, their brownstone had become a true home, filled with a perfect blend of his technological innovations and her natural elements. The garden had flourished under Katherine's care, becoming a sanctuary in the midst of the busy city. Alex had scaled back his direct involvement in his company, choosing instead to focus on the research and development he loved while leaving the corporate management to others. Katherine's business had grown organically, her unique designs now sought after by those who appreciated authenticity over ostentation. On a warm summer evening, they sat in their garden, watching their 1-year-old daughter Eleanor toddle among the flowers, her chubby hands reaching for colorful blooms. "Careful, little one," Katherine called gently. "Some flowers are just for looking." Alex wrapped his arm around his wife, marveling at how completely his life had transformed in the years since he'd fled his own party. "Do you ever think about how different things would be if I hadn't escaped that night, if I hadn't found you in the garden?" Katherine leaned her head against his shoulder, watching their daughter explore the world with wide-eyed wonder. "I believe we would have found each other somehow. Some connections are just meant to be." Alex pressed a kiss to her temple, contentment settling deep in his chest. "I never expected to find you that night," he murmured. "But now I can't imagine a life where I didn't." As the sun set over their garden, casting golden light across their small family, Alex reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought him here. He had escaped a party seeking momentary solitude, but had instead found something infinitely more valuable. A woman who saw past his wealth to the man beneath, a love that transformed rather than confined, and a life rich in the things that truly mattered. In the quiet sanctuary of their garden, surrounded by the beauty Katherine had created and the family they were building together, Alexander Drake, billionaire, innovator, husband, father, was finally, completely home.